The relationship did not become peaceful. You became easier to erase. Every time something hurt you, you reduced the size of your reaction. Every time they pulled away, you reduced the size of your needs. Every time honesty created tension, you removed another sentence from your mouth. And eventually something strange happened. The relationship became better. Fewer arguments, less resistance, less tension. But not because two people learned how to love each other, because one of them was slowly disappearing. This is how some people keep relationships for years. They do not solve the problem. They remove themselves from the problem. They become so careful, so agreeable, so easy to keep that the other person never has to meet the real version of them. And here is the part that should disturb you. Someone can stay with you for years while having almost no relationship with who you actually are. They know the version that forgives quickly, the version that never asks for too much, the version that changes plans, the version that says it's okay, the version that keeps swallowing what should have been spoken. Then one day you finally become visible again. You say no. You stop chasing. You stop over-explaining. You refuse something you used to tolerate. And suddenly they tell you, you've changed. Of course you changed. The person they were comfortable with was built from everything you were afraid to say. And this is where the truth of the relationship begins, because your first boundary does not create the problem. It removes the disguise from it. So before you spend another year trying to keep somebody in your life, ask yourself one question. Does this relationship love me, or does it only work because I keep deleting the parts of me that make them uncomfortable? These 7 lessons are about what happens when you stop deleting yourself. And you may discover that the moment you become whole again, some people suddenly cannot stay. Lesson 1, stop paying for connection with pieces of yourself. Sometimes you do not lose yourself in one big moment. You lose yourself slowly. You stop saying what hurts you because you are afraid they may leave. You accept things you once said you would never accept. You become quieter, easier, more available, more forgiving, not because it feels right, but because you are trying to keep the connection alive. And little by little, the price of keeping them becomes you. A healthy relationship should never require you to keep cutting pieces from your personality, your peace, your values, and your dignity just to make someone comfortable. Compromise is part of love. Self-erasure is not. If someone can only stay when you have no boundaries, no voice, and no needs, then they are not really choosing you. They are choosing the version of you that asks for nothing. Never become smaller just so someone has less reason to leave. Because the moment you have to abandon yourself to keep another person, the relationship has already become too expensive. Lesson 2, they may love your access more than they love your actual self. One of the hardest truths to accept is that some people do not miss you when you pull away. They miss the access they had to you. They miss knowing you would answer every call. They miss having someone who would always listen, always forgive, always adjust, and always return no matter how poorly they behaved. That can look like love from the outside, but love and access are not the same thing. Watch what happens when you become less available. When you stop fixing every problem, when you stop explaining yourself for hours, when you finally say, I cannot keep doing this, their reaction will tell you something important. A person who truly values you will try to understand you. A person who only valued your availability may become angry because the benefits they receive from you are disappearing. This is why you should never measure your importance by how desperately someone wants access to you. Ask a deeper question. Do they respect me when I am not useful to them? Because being needed can make you feel important while quietly keeping you trapped. Real love does not only appreciate what you give. Real love respects the person who is doing the giving. Lesson 3, the fear of losing them can make you lose your own voice. Fear changes the way you speak. When you are terrified of losing someone, you stop saying what you really feel. You soften every truth. You hide your disappointment. You rehearse simple sentences in your head because you are afraid one wrong word might push them away. Soon you are not having a relationship. You are managing their reactions. You say it's fine when it is not fine. You say I understand when something inside you feels deeply hurt. You stay quiet because silence feels safer than the possibility of losing them. But every time you silence yourself to protect the relationship, you teach yourself a dangerous lesson. Their presence matters more than your truth. That is how your voice slowly disappears. You begin asking, will they leave if I say this? Instead of asking, why do I feel unsafe telling the truth? There is a difference between speaking with kindness and living in fear. You do not need to become harsh. You do not need to fight over everything. But you should be able to express pain, disagreement, needs, and boundaries without feeling that the relationship might collapse. The person meant to walk beside you should not require you to become voiceless just to keep the peace. Because losing someone can hurt for a season, but losing your own voice can make you disappear inside your own life. Lesson 4. Your first real boundary will reveal what your sacrifice was hiding. The first real boundary changes everything. Not because the boundary is cruel, not because you suddenly became difficult, but because for the first time, the relationship is being asked to survive without your constant sacrifice. Before that moment, you may not even realize how much of the connection depended on you giving more than you should. You were the one who adjusted. You were the one who forgave quickly. You were the one who answered even when you were exhausted. You were the one who canceled your plans. You were the one who accepted the joke that hurt. You were the one who swallowed the disrespect because you did not want another argument. You were the one who kept saying, maybe they did not mean it that way. And because you kept absorbing everything, the relationship appeared peaceful. But sometimes peace is not proof that a relationship is healthy. Sometimes there is no conflict because one person has stopped resisting. There is no disagreement because one person stopped speaking. There is no tension because one person decided that keeping the other person comfortable was more important than being honest. That kind of peace has a hidden cost. Eventually, something inside you becomes tired. Not angry, not hateful, just tired. Tired of explaining the same pain. Tired of accepting the same behavior. Tired of being understanding while nobody tries to understand you. And one day you finally say something different. No, I cannot do that. I need some space. That hurt me. I will not accept being spoken to like that. I am not available tonight. I need you to respect this. The sentence may be small, but the reaction can be enormous. Suddenly, the person who was comfortable with everything becomes upset. They may say you have changed. They may accuse you of becoming selfish. They may tell you that you are overreacting. They may remind you of everything they have done for you. They may become cold. They may withdraw affection. They may make you feel guilty for asking for something completely reasonable. And this is where many people make a painful mistake. They think the boundary caused the problem. It did not. The boundary revealed the problem. The problem was already there. Your sacrifice was covering it. Your silence was hiding it. Your constant availability was keeping it from being seen. The first boundary simply removes the cover. Think about that carefully. If somebody respects you only while you never disappoint them, that is not respect. If somebody is kind only while you never say no, that kindness has conditions. If somebody values you only while you remain useful, their attachment may be connected more to what you provide than to who you are. This is why boundaries are powerful. They reveal what constant giving can hide. When you give without limits, it is difficult to know who truly values you and who simply enjoys the benefits of having unlimited access to you. But the moment you create a limit, motives become clearer. The person who loves you may not always like your boundary. They may feel disappointed. They may need time to adjust. They may disagree. Healthy people are still human, but they will not make your dignity the price of staying connected. They can hear no without turning it into betrayal. They can hear I need space without treating it like punishment. They can hear that hurt me without making your pain an attack against them. There is room for your humanity. That is what matters. A real relationship has enough space for two people, not one person and one permanent sacrifice. You need to understand something else. When you have spent years pleasing people, your first boundary may even feel wrong to you. Your body may become anxious. Your mind may start producing frightening thoughts. What if they leave? What if they stop talking to me? What if they think I do not care? What if I am being selfish? You may feel guilty even when you have done nothing wrong. Why? Because you trained yourself to connect love with self-denial. You became used to proving your goodness by how much discomfort you could tolerate. You learned to feel safe when everybody else was happy with you. So when someone becomes disappointed, your nervous system may treat that disappointment like danger. That is why boundaries can feel painful at first. Not because they are wrong, because they are unfamiliar. You have to learn a new truth. Someone being disappointed in your decision does not automatically mean your decision is wrong. Someone becoming upset with your boundary does not automatically mean you have hurt them. Someone losing access to you is not the same as you mistreating them. Sometimes people call your boundary painful because your old lack of boundaries was convenient for them. There is a difference. You are allowed to protect time you cannot replace. You are allowed to protect your energy. You are allowed to protect your peace. You are allowed to say that something does not work for you. You are allowed to stop participating in patterns that keep damaging you. And you are allowed to do all of this without becoming cruel. That is important. Boundaries are not revenge. They are not weapons. They are not silent punishments. A boundary is not, do what I want or I will hurt you. A healthy boundary is, this is what I can accept, and this is what I will do if that line continues to be crossed. It is not about controlling another person. It is about taking responsibility for yourself. You cannot force someone to speak respectfully, but you can decide that you will leave the conversation when they insult you. You cannot force someone to value your time, but you can stop rearranging your entire life for someone who repeatedly wastes it. You cannot force someone to communicate honestly, but you can refuse to stay trapped in endless confusion. You cannot force someone to change, but you can change how much access they have to you. That is where your power lives, not in controlling people, in deciding what you will participate in. And sometimes your boundary will expose something painful. You may realize that a person who seemed close to you was only comfortable because you were carrying the emotional weight of the relationship. The moment you stop carrying everything, the connection weakens. That can hurt, but do not misunderstand the lesson. You did not destroy the relationship by putting down the weight. You discovered that the relationship could not stand unless you carried it alone. That knowledge hurts, but it also frees you. Because once you see the truth, you can stop blaming yourself. You can stop asking why you were not enough. You were giving too much to something that required your exhaustion to survive. And that is not sustainable. Some people will surprise you in a beautiful way. You set a boundary and they listen. They apologize. They adjust. They ask questions. They respect your need. They may not understand perfectly, but they make room for you. Those people teach you something too. They show you that love does not have to collapse when you become honest. Healthy connection can survive truth. Healthy connection can survive difference. Healthy connection can survive limits. In fact, it often becomes stronger because there is less resentment hiding underneath it. When you no longer have to pretend, you can finally be present. When you no longer have to perform, you can finally connect. When you no longer fear that every disagreement will end the relationship, you can finally breathe inside it. So do not fear what your first real boundary reveals. Pay attention. The reaction is information. If they respect it, you learn that the connection may have room to grow. If they attack it, you learn that your previous sacrifice may have been serving a purpose you never noticed. If they punish you, you learn something. If they guilt you, you learn something. If they threaten to leave every time you stand up for yourself, you learn something. Do not ignore those lessons just because you are afraid of what they mean. There is no wisdom in remaining blind to preserve a relationship that is already making you disappear. You deserve relationships where your kindness is appreciated without being exploited, where your softness does not require weakness, where your generosity is received with gratitude instead of entitlement, where your yes means something because your no is also allowed to exist. That is the beauty of a boundary. It does not only keep harmful behavior out, it keeps your real self inside. It protects the parts of you that you used to give away just to avoid losing people. And perhaps this is the most important thing to remember. A boundary does not always end a relationship. Sometimes it ends an unhealthy version of the relationship. What happens after that tells you whether something healthier can be built. If the connection can grow with your dignity intact, there may be something real there. But if the relationship only works when you have no voice, no limits, and no freedom to be yourself, then your boundary did not ruin love. It exposed what was pretending to be love. Let that truth make you wiser, not colder, wiser. Because from now on, you do not need to wait until you are completely exhausted before you say something. You do not need to earn the right to have limits. You do not need to become angry before your needs become valid. You do not need permission to protect the person you are becoming. Your first real boundary may make some people uncomfortable. Let it. Sometimes discomfort is simply the sound of an old pattern losing control over you. And when that old pattern breaks, something important returns. Your voice, your clarity, your dignity, yourself. Lesson 5, when you return to yourself, the wrong people feel abandoned. There is a strange moment that happens when you begin returning to yourself. You feel healthier, but somebody else may accuse you of becoming worse. You finally stop answering every message immediately, and they call you distant. You stop apologizing for everything, and they call you arrogant. You stop letting guilt make your decisions, and they say you have changed. You begin taking care of yourself, and somehow they act as if you have done something to them. At first, this can confuse you. You may think, maybe I really am becoming selfish. But look deeper. Sometimes the people who benefited most from your self-neglect will feel the most threatened by your self-respect. Not because self-respect is wrong, because it changes the arrangement they were used to. They were used to getting the first version of your time. You received whatever was left. They were used to being able to call at any hour. You were used to dropping everything. They were used to saying things without considering the impact. You were used to forgiving before they even understood what they had done. They were used to you carrying the emotional weight. You were used to calling it love. Then something changes. You start sleeping when you are tired. You stop running after people who withdraw whenever they want control. You stop explaining your basic needs 10 different ways. You stop accepting confusing behavior just because you are emotionally attached. You begin asking yourself a question you should have asked long ago. What is this relationship doing to me? That question can change your entire life. Because before, your only concern may have been, how do I keep them? Now you begin asking, who am I becoming while I keep them? That is a much more important question. A person can stay in your life while you slowly disappear from your own. You can technically keep the relationship and still lose something more valuable. Your confidence, your energy, your peace, your ability to trust yourself, your joy, your sense of identity. Sometimes you become so focused on preventing another person from leaving that you never notice how far you have traveled away from yourself. Returning to yourself means reversing that journey. You begin listening to your own discomfort again. You begin trusting what you see instead of constantly talking yourself out of it. You begin remembering what you enjoy. You reconnect with people you neglected. You return to goals you abandoned. You stop measuring every choice by how another person might react. You start becoming a full human being again. And yes, some people will feel the difference. Healthy people may be happy for you. They may say, I am glad you are taking care of yourself. They may respect the changes. They may encourage you to rest. They may appreciate your growth. But someone who depended on your lack of self-respect may react differently. They may experience your healing as rejection. Why? Because they confused your self-abandonment with loyalty. When you were always available, they called you caring. When you stopped having needs, they called you easy to love. When you tolerated disrespect, they called you understanding. When you never challenged them, they called you peaceful. But what if those qualities were not always signs of love? What if sometimes they were signs of fear? Fear of conflict, fear of rejection, fear of loneliness, fear of disappointing people, fear of being called difficult. You can be kind and still be afraid. You can be patient and still be abandoning yourself. You can love someone deeply and still participate in a pattern that is slowly damaging you. This is why returning to yourself requires courage. You are not only changing your actions, you are changing the role people expect you to play. And people can become attached to roles. The fixer, the rescuer, the listener, the one who always understands, the one who never leaves, the one who gives another chance, the one who says yes, the one who keeps everyone together. When you stop playing that role every minute of your life, someone may ask, what happened to you? Sometimes the answer is simple. You finally happened to you. You finally became important in your own life. You finally stopped treating your own needs like interruptions. You finally realized that being a good person does not require becoming an exhausted person. You finally understood that love cannot be measured only by how much pain you can survive. That transformation may confuse people who only knew the version of you that never protected yourself. Let them be confused. You do not need to shrink again just to make your growth easier for someone else to understand. There is another difficult part of returning to yourself. You may feel grief, because when you change, some relationships change too. Some become healthier, some become more distant, some end. This does not mean every person who struggles with your change is bad. Growth affects relationships. Sometimes two good people simply need to learn a new way of relating. But pay attention to the difference between someone who needs time to adjust and someone who is committed to pushing you back into your old weakness. One says, this is different, but I want to understand. The other says, I liked you better when you never challenged me. One may feel hurt but still respect you. The other weaponizes hurt to control you. One wants connection with the person you are becoming. The other wants access to the person you used to be. Know the difference. You do not owe anyone permanent access to an unhealthy version of you. You are allowed to grow. You are allowed to become harder to manipulate. You are allowed to become slower to say yes. You are allowed to stop chasing. You are allowed to need consistency. You are allowed to value clarity. You are allowed to ask for respect. You are allowed to leave conversations that become degrading. You are allowed to become someone your younger self would feel safe with. And if somebody experiences all of that as abandonment, ask yourself an important question. Did I abandon them? Or did I stop abandoning myself for them? Those are not the same thing. There may have been a time when every conflict sent you into panic. If someone became quiet, you chased them. If someone pulled away, you ran after them. If someone was upset, you immediately assumed you had done something wrong. If someone threatened to leave, you surrendered. You learn to protect connections before you protected truth. That pattern can become addictive, because every time you fix the tension, you feel temporary relief. They are still here. The relationship survived. But each time you buy peace by betraying yourself, the price becomes higher. Soon, you need their presence simply to feel that your sacrifice was worth it. That is how fear keeps people trapped. You think, I have already given so much, I cannot lose them now. But the amount you have already lost is not a reason to keep losing more. Read that again. The amount you have already sacrificed is not proof that you should continue sacrificing. Sometimes the wisest thing you can do is stop the cost from growing. Returning to yourself begins there. It means you stop asking the relationship to justify all the pain you endured. You stop trying to make the past worth it by giving away more of your future. You begin again, with yourself included. Maybe you start small. You take an evening for yourself without guilt. You let the phone ring when you need rest. You stop explaining a decision that does not require permission. You say what you actually think. You spend time with people who make you feel calm rather than constantly uncertain. You return to a hobby that once made you feel alive. You rebuild your routine. You pray with more presence. You reflect. You become quiet enough to hear the parts of yourself that were buried under everyone else's expectations. At first, it may feel lonely, because chaos can become familiar. When you have spent a long time earning affection, simple peace can feel empty. Do not mistake unfamiliar peace for loneliness. Give yourself time. Your heart may need to learn that connection does not always have to be chased. Love does not always have to be earned through exhaustion. Being wanted is not supposed to require constant fear. You may also discover something surprising. When you stop performing for people, you begin seeing who actually enjoys your presence. Not your service, not your endless availability, not your ability to solve their problems, your presence. They can sit with you without needing something. They can celebrate you without making it about themselves. They can hear your boundaries without treating them as insults. They can allow you to have a life that does not revolve around them. Those relationships feel different. There is room to breathe. And that room matters, because real love should not make your identity feel like a threat. A healthy person does not need you to remain insecure so they can feel secure. They do not need you dependent so they can feel important. They do not need you silent so they can feel powerful. They do not need you small so they can stay comfortable. Remember that. When you return to yourself, your life may become quieter. Some people may disappear. Some conversations may stop. Some invitations may decrease. But do not automatically call that loss. Sometimes the noise was coming from people who only had access to you because you had no gate. When the gate appears, the crowd becomes smaller. But what remains may become far more real. This is not about isolating yourself. It is not about becoming suspicious of everyone. It is not about believing that you need nobody. Human beings need connection. We need care. We need community. We need love. But connection is healthiest when two people meet as whole human beings, not when one person keeps disappearing so the other person can remain. You should be able to love without erasing yourself. You should be able to give without becoming empty. You should be able to care without carrying responsibilities that do not belong to you. And you should be able to stay connected to someone without losing connection with your own soul. So if you are changing and someone says, "You are not the same anymore," do not immediately apologize. Maybe you are not the same. Maybe that is the point. Maybe the old you accepted things the current you finally understands. Maybe the old you confused being chosen with being valued. Maybe the old you feared solitude more than self-betrayal. Maybe the old you kept relationships alive by keeping yourself small. You can honor who you were without remaining who you were. That version of you survived the best way they knew how. But survival is not the final destination. You are allowed to learn. You are allowed to heal. You are allowed to return. And the people who truly love you will not need you to disappear again just to prove that you still care. They will learn the new shape of your presence. They will meet you there. And the ones who only loved your self-abandonment may call your return selfish. Let them. Sometimes becoming yourself again will feel like abandonment to people who benefited from your absence. Lesson 6. Let them walk before you walk away from yourself. There comes a point when fear makes you choose between two losses: losing them or losing yourself. Many people choose themselves last, again and again. They tolerate what hurts. They beg for conversations. They chase someone who keeps creating distance. They accept half effort because half feels better than nothing. They lower their standards. They explain away behavior they would tell a friend never to accept. They keep reaching, keep calling, keep repairing, keep waiting. because the thought of that person walking away feels unbearable. But there is something you need to understand. Preventing someone from leaving is not always the same as saving a relationship. Sometimes you are only delaying an ending while damaging yourself in the process. There are relationships where love exists, but both people need to work harder. There are misunderstandings that deserve conversation. There are difficult seasons that require patience. There are people worth fighting for. But fighting for a relationship is different from fighting against someone's repeated decision not to show up. You cannot build commitment for two people. You cannot create honesty for someone who prefers confusion. You cannot make someone value what they repeatedly take for granted. You cannot force emotional maturity into someone by loving them harder. And you cannot keep proving your worth until another person finally decides to recognize it. At some point, chasing becomes a form of self-rejection. You are standing in front of someone saying, "Please choose me," while your own heart is behind you whispering, "When will you choose me?" That is the moment many people avoid. Because choosing yourself may mean allowing someone else to leave. And that can hurt deeply. You may have memories, plans, promises, years together, a future you imagined. You may know their family. They may know yours. You may have built routines around each other. The idea of letting go can feel like tearing down an entire world. That pain is real. But pain alone is not proof that staying is right. Sometimes we confuse emotional intensity with meaning. We think, if losing them hurts this much, they must be meant to stay. Not always. Sometimes losing them hurts because you built your identity around their presence. Sometimes it hurts because you ignored yourself for so long that you do not know who you are without them. Sometimes it hurts because you were attached not only to the person, but to the future you hoped they would eventually give you. You are grieving reality and possibility at the same time. That is why walking away can feel impossible. But there is another kind of grief, the grief of staying too long. The grief of looking at yourself years later and realizing how many times you knew, how many times your heart told you something was wrong, how many times your dignity asked you to stop, how many times you accepted another apology without any real change, how many times you returned because loneliness frightened you. That grief can be heavier, because now you are not only mourning a person, you are mourning the years you spent disappearing. This is why there are moments when you must let people walk before you walk away from yourself. Do not read that as pride. It is not about acting like you do not care. It is not about saying, "I never needed you anyway." You can love someone and still release them. You can miss someone and still stop chasing them. You can wish them well and still admit that staying connected is hurting you. You can forgive someone and still decide that the old relationship cannot continue. Strength does not require pretending you feel nothing. Real strength can say, "This hurts me deeply, but I will not destroy myself to avoid this pain." That is maturity. There is dignity in allowing people to make their choices. If someone repeatedly chooses distance, let that choice speak. If someone repeatedly disappears and returns only when convenient, stop treating every return like proof of love. If someone keeps threatening to leave whenever you express a need, understand what is happening. The threat is teaching you to stay quiet. And every time you surrender, the threat becomes more powerful. Eventually, you may begin living like a guest in your own relationship. Careful, quiet, afraid to touch anything, afraid to say the wrong thing, afraid to ask for too much. That is not emotional safety. A person should not have to keep you terrified of losing them in order to keep you loving them. Love that survives only through fear is not secure love. There is another reason people chase. They want closure. They think one more conversation will finally explain everything. One more message. One more question. One more meeting. One more chance to say the right thing. Sometimes closure comes through conversation, but sometimes closure comes through behavior. A person may never give you the perfect explanation. Their repeated lack of effort may be the explanation. Their inconsistency may be the explanation. Their silence may be the explanation. Their refusal to repair what they keep breaking may be the explanation. Do not spend years waiting for words that their actions have already spoken. You deserve clarity, but you cannot force another person to provide it. Sometimes you create your own clarity by accepting what is happening. That acceptance can be painful because hope is powerful. Hope can keep you standing outside a closed door long after you should have turned around. You keep thinking, maybe tomorrow. Maybe they're just confused. Maybe they need time. Maybe if I become easier, calmer, prettier, stronger, less emotional, more patient, more understanding. Notice what happens. The relationship becomes a project of changing yourself. You start believing their commitment is hidden somewhere inside a better version of you. So you keep editing yourself. But if someone can only choose you after you become someone else, what exactly have they chosen? Not you. That is why you must stop auditioning for places where you are supposed to be loved. Of course, growth matters. We should all become wiser, more patient, more honest, more mature. But growth should come from truth, not desperation. Do not improve yourself because you believe becoming perfect will finally make someone incapable of leaving. No human relationship comes with that guarantee. People can leave even when you love well. They can change. Life can change. The answer is not to become impossible to leave. The answer is to become someone who will not abandon themselves if another person does leave. That is real security, not certainty that everyone stays, confidence that you will still have yourself if they do not. Imagine the freedom in that. You can love without gripping. You can care without controlling. You can give someone the freedom to choose because your identity does not collapse if their choice is different from yours. This does not make love weaker. It makes love cleaner. There is less fear inside it, less begging, less manipulation, less performing. You can say, "I want you here, but I will not force you to stay." That sentence contains both love and dignity. And sometimes allowing someone to walk gives you information that chasing never could. When you stop running after them, do they turn around? When you stop doing all the emotional work, do they contribute? When you stop initiating every conversation, does silence take over? When you stop fixing every rupture, do they attempt repair? You learn what the relationship looks like without your over-functioning. That can be difficult to see, but you need the truth more than you need a beautiful illusion. If everything collapses the moment you stop carrying everything, then you were not being supported. You were being used as the support structure. That is exhausting. You were never meant to hold two adults together by yourself. So let people reveal what they choose when you stop choosing for both of you. If they care, they have an opportunity to show it. If they do not, you receive painful clarity. Either way, you stop living inside endless guessing. And if they walk, grieve. Do not rush yourself. Some losses need to be felt. Cry if you need to cry. Miss them. Remember them. Be angry. Be sad. Feel disappointed. Healing does not require acting unaffected. But while you grieve them, do not return to abandoning yourself. Do not send the message every time loneliness rises. Do not confuse withdrawal pain with proof that you made the wrong decision. When an unhealthy pattern ends, your mind can crave what was familiar, even if what was familiar was hurting you. Give yourself time. Fill the empty spaces slowly. Return to routines. Return to people who love you steadily. Return to your work. Return to your faith. Return to sleep. Return to your health. Return to your goals. Return to yourself. The first days may feel strange. You may reach for your phone. You may replay old conversations. You may wonder whether you should have tried harder. Remember, trying harder is not always wisdom. Sometimes you already tried enough. Sometimes the next act of love is not another attempt. It is acceptance. And if somebody comes back, do not judge the return only by emotion. Look for change. Anyone can miss access. Anyone can feel lonely. Anyone can make promises when consequences finally become real. Ask whether the pattern changed. Are the actions different? Is the effort consistent? Is there accountability? Is there respect for the boundary that caused conflict before? Do not reopen the same door simply because the knock sounds emotional. Your heart deserves evidence, not only intensity. You are not cruel for requiring change. You are not unforgiving for learning from what happened. Forgiveness and access are separate decisions. You can forgive and still be careful. You can care and still say no. You can love and still protect yourself. That wisdom may save you from repeating years of pain. And remember this, not everyone who leaves is your enemy. Sometimes people are simply unable to walk with the person you are becoming. Sometimes your values differ. Sometimes your paths separate. Sometimes you both care but cannot create something healthy together. You do not need to turn every ending into hatred. You can release people without destroying their character in your mind. You can say, "This mattered to me," and it still cannot continue. That is a mature form of letting go. No bitterness required. No revenge required. No public performance required. Just truth. You are allowed to choose peace over endless negotiation. You are allowed to stop convincing someone to see your worth. You are allowed to stop chasing clarity from someone committed to confusion. You are allowed to let the door close. Because there is a point where keeping somebody becomes too expensive. And the price is not money, it is your sleep, your self-respect, your confidence, your concentration, your emotional stability, your ability to enjoy ordinary life. your trust in yourself, your future. Never spend all of that just to say at least they stayed. A person staying is not always a victory. Sometimes the real victory is that you finally stop leaving yourself. So if they have decided to walk, do not throw your dignity under their feet to slow them down. Let them make their choice, and then make yours. Choose healing, choose truth, choose the parts of yourself you kept abandoning. Choose the life that does not require you to beg for basic care. Let them walk before you walk away from yourself. Lesson 7. Never save a relationship by destroying the person inside it. A relationship can survive and still be a tragedy. That may sound strange, but think about it. Two people can remain together for years while one of them slowly loses their voice. The relationship survives, their confidence does not. The relationship survives, their joy does not. The relationship survives, their peace does not. The relationship survives, but the person inside it becomes almost unrecognizable. This is why staying is not always proof of success. Sometimes we become so focused on keeping a relationship alive that we forget to ask whether the people inside it are still alive emotionally. You can preserve the structure and destroy the soul. You can protect the label while losing everything the label was supposed to represent. You can say, "We are still together," while silently admitting, "I am no longer myself." That is too high a price. And yet many people pay it because they have been taught that endurance is always noble. They believe leaving any unhealthy pattern means failure. They think loving harder will fix everything. They think patience means accepting endless damage. They think loyalty means never changing access no matter what happens. But patience should not become permission for someone to destroy you. Loyalty should not require loyalty to your own suffering. Forgiveness should not become a door through which the same harm enters again and again. Love needs wisdom. Without wisdom, even beautiful qualities can be used against you. Your kindness can become the reason somebody never changes. Your forgiveness can become the reason consequences disappear. Your patience can become the place where disrespect learns to live comfortably. Your loyalty can become a cage. That does not mean kindness is wrong. It means kindness needs boundaries, forgiveness needs wisdom, patience needs truth, loyalty needs dignity. Otherwise, the relationship begins surviving by consuming you. It takes a little more each year. At first, maybe it takes your time, then your energy, then your voice, then your friendships, then your interests, then your standards, then your confidence. And because the change happens slowly, you may not notice it. You adapt. Human beings are very good at adapting. We can become used to things that once shocked us. The first disrespectful comment hurts deeply. The 10th one hurts less because you expect it. The first broken promise makes you question everything. Later, broken promises become normal. The first silent treatment frightens you. Eventually, you organize your behavior around avoiding it. This is how a harmful dynamic can become a lifestyle, not because you chose pain, because you learned how to survive around it. And survival can look like functioning. You still go to work, you still smile, you still answer people, you still post photographs, you still attend gatherings. From the outside, nobody may know, but inside, you are constantly calculating. What mood are they in? What can I say? What should I avoid? Will this upset them? Should I mention what happened? Maybe I should wait. Maybe I should stay quiet. Your mind becomes a security system, always scanning, always predicting, always adjusting. And eventually you become so skilled at keeping the relationship calm that you forget what calm feels like inside your own body. That is when you need to ask a serious question. What exactly am I saving? A relationship should not be preserved at any cost. The purpose of a healthy relationship is not merely continuation. It is connection, respect, mercy, trust, safety, growth, shared effort. A relationship that continues while destroying all of these things is not being saved in the way you think. Only its shape is being saved, its name, its appearance, its history, but the substance is dying. You cannot call that victory. Suppose you have to become permanently silent to stay. What have you saved? Suppose you have to tolerate constant disrespect. What have you saved? Suppose you lose your closest friends because someone wants control over all your attention. What have you saved? Suppose you stop pursuing every goal because your growth makes another person insecure. What have you saved? Suppose you spend years anxious, confused, and emotionally exhausted just to prevent an ending. What have you saved? Sometimes we protect relationships because endings frighten us more than erosion. An ending is visible. Everybody sees it. There is a date, a conversation, a final message, a closed door. Erosion is quieter. You lose yourself one grain at a time. Nobody marks the day. There is no ceremony for the moment you stopped saying what you felt. No announcement for the day you gave up another dream. No notification when your confidence drops another level. You simply wake up one day and realize you have become a smaller person. That is why slow self-loss can be more dangerous than sudden heartbreak. Heartbreak announces itself. Self-erasure can hide inside normal life. Do not let fear of a visible ending trap you inside an invisible destruction. You are more than the role you play in someone else's life. You are a whole person. You have responsibilities toward your own character, your own future, your own mind, your own faith, your own gifts, your own purpose. A relationship should become part of your life. It should not consume the entire definition of who you are. You should still have thoughts that belong to you, dreams that belong to you, friendships that nourish you, time to think, time to rest, space to grow, the freedom to disagree, the freedom to be honest, the freedom to evolve. This is not selfishness, it is emotional health. Two people should not have to become one personality in order to remain connected. You can love deeply and remain distinct. You can care deeply and still have boundaries. You can build a life together without destroying the individual lives that entered the relationship. That is what mature connection looks like. There is togetherness without possession, care without control, support without dependency, sacrifice without self-destruction. And yes, sacrifice matters. Any meaningful relationship requires sacrifice sometimes. You may need to compromise. You may need to put another person's needs before your own for a season. You may need to be patient when they are struggling. You may need to carry more when they are weak. But healthy sacrifice moves. Today I carry more. Tomorrow you may carry more. Healthy sacrifice is seen. It is appreciated. It does not become your permanent identity. Self-destruction is different. Self-destruction says your needs never matter. Your pain never gets a turn. Your dreams are always negotiable. Your limits are always selfish. Your exhaustion is always ignored. Everything flows in one direction. That is not a difficult season. That is a system. And systems do not change just because one person keeps hoping harder. They change when behavior changes, when accountability appears, when honesty becomes possible, when both people participate. You cannot repair a two-person system alone. Remember that. You may be incredibly loving, wise, patient, and sincere, but your goodness does not give you control over another person's choices. This truth can save you years. Sometimes people stay trapped because they believe, if I just love them correctly, they will become different. Love can inspire change, but love cannot force change. Someone has to want to become accountable. Someone has to care about the harm they cause. Someone has to choose growth when nobody is forcing them. Otherwise, your love becomes an endless waiting room. You sit there holding a future version of someone who never arrives. Meanwhile, your own life keeps moving. Days become months. Months become years. You keep waiting for consistency, waiting for honesty, waiting for respect, waiting for the apology that changes behavior, waiting for the relationship you were promised. Hope becomes painful when it keeps you attached to potential while reality keeps hurting you. Judge patterns by what they repeatedly produce. Do not build your life only around who someone could become. See who they are choosing to be now. This does not mean people cannot change. They can. People grow. People heal. People surprise us. But real change has evidence. It does not need endless speeches. You can see it in behavior, consistency, accountability, humility, effort, different choices over time. If the words change but the cycle stays identical, the relationship has not changed. You have only entered another round. Protect yourself from falling in love with promises that never become patterns. And if you realize the relationship is destroying you, do not make the mistake of thinking your only options are to stay silently or leave instantly. Sometimes the first step is honesty. Name what is happening. Stop minimizing it. Seek wise support. Create boundaries. Observe the response. Stop carrying responsibilities that belong to the other person. Allow consequences. Protect your mental and emotional space. Then look at what remains. Can the relationship become healthier when truth enters it? Or does truth itself become dangerous? That answer matters. You do not have to make your life decisions based on one emotional moment, but you should not ignore a destructive pattern simply because you are afraid of change. Give weight to what repeats. Patterns reveal what apologies sometimes hide. And through all of this, keep one commitment. Do not destroy yourself trying to prove that you can love someone through anything. You do not need that medal. There is no prize for becoming the person who tolerated the most. There is no wisdom in saying, I stayed no matter what. If no matter what included losing your dignity, health, peace, and identity. Sometimes the bravest form of love is refusing to continue participating in what is harming both people. Because endless tolerance can damage the other person too. If someone never faces consequences, why would they confront themselves? If every betrayal is immediately erased, why would they learn the weight of trust? If every disrespectful act is absorbed, why would they understand the cost? Your boundary may be painful, but pain is not always cruelty. Sometimes consequences are the first honest mirror a person receives. Whether they use that mirror is their choice. You cannot control the outcome. You can only stop helping the unhealthy pattern survive. This is where self-respect becomes more than a feeling. It becomes a decision. Self-respect is not standing in front of a mirror and saying positive words. It is what you refuse to keep negotiating. It is what you stop returning to. It is the conversation you finally have. It is the message you do not send. It is the apology you no longer accept without change. It is the standard you maintain even when loneliness tries to bargain with you. Self-respect becomes visible under pressure. Everybody can have standards when nothing is at risk. The real test comes when maintaining the standard might cost you someone you love. That is when you discover whether you truly believe your own dignity matters. You may still shake. You may still cry. You may still wish things were different. Courage does not require emotional numbness. Sometimes courage is simply refusing to go backward while your heart is begging for what feels familiar. And if something ends because you stop destroying yourself to maintain it, allow yourself to see the ending differently. You did not fail because you refused to disappear. You did not fail because you required respect. You did not fail because you finally admitted that love alone was not solving the pattern. Sometimes the relationship failed long before you stopped carrying it. Sometimes you were simply the last person keeping the appearance alive. Put down the weight. You are allowed. And after you put it down, rebuild the person who is buried underneath it. Ask yourself, what did I stop doing? Who did I stop talking to? What dreams did I postpone? What parts of my personality became quieter? What did I used to enjoy before anxiety occupied all my attention? What boundaries did I once have? What did I teach myself to accept? Return carefully, not to the exact person you were before. You know more now. Return wiser. Return with stronger standards. Return with compassion for yourself. Return with the knowledge that being chosen is not enough. You also need to be respected. Being wanted is not enough. You need emotional safety. Being missed is not enough. You need consistency. Hearing "I love you" is not enough if the behavior repeatedly makes you feel invisible. Love is important, but love must become behavior. It must become respect. It must become responsibility. It must become care. It must become honesty. Otherwise, the word becomes too easy to use. And never believe that protecting yourself means you have become incapable of love. Often the opposite is true. When you stop giving from fear, you can finally give from freedom. When you stop saying yes because you are terrified of abandonment, your yes becomes sincere. When you stop pretending, your affection becomes real. When you no longer need another person to complete your identity, you can love them without placing impossible pressure on them. Self-respect does not destroy healthy love. It removes desperation from it. It allows you to say, "I love you, but I will not lie to myself for you. I care about you, but I will not accept everything from you. I want this relationship, but I also need to remain a person inside it." That is not rejection. That is mature love. And if someone cannot accept a version of love where you still have dignity, then the problem is not that you suddenly became difficult. The problem is that your disappearance had become part of the agreement. End that agreement. You were never created to spend your entire life becoming smaller so another person could remain comfortable. You were not given a voice so that fear could permanently silence it. You were not given a heart so that somebody else could use all of it while you received none of your own compassion. You are allowed to belong to yourself too. Remember the entire journey of these lessons. Do not pay for connection with pieces of yourself. Learn the difference between someone loving you and someone loving their access to you. Do not let fear take your voice. Let boundaries reveal what sacrifice was hiding. Do not apologize for returning to yourself. Let people walk before you walk away from yourself. And finally, never become so committed to saving a relationship that you destroy the human being living inside it. Because one day, every relationship will face change. People change. Circumstances change. Life moves. Nothing stays exactly the same forever. But wherever life takes you, there is one person you will continue waking up with. You. protect that relationship too. Protect your ability to look at yourself without shame. Protect your peace. Protect your character. Protect the voice that tells you when something is wrong. Protect the dreams that make you feel alive. Protect your ability to love without fear. And choose relationships where you do not have to trade those things for permission to stay. The right people will not need your disappearance as proof of devotion. They will not demand that you become less intelligent, less expressive, less ambitious, less honest, less alive, or less yourself so they can feel secure. They will have room for your growth, room for your truth, room for your boundaries, room for your humanity. And if someone cannot make room for the real you, do not spend your entire life cutting pieces from yourself until you fit. Some spaces are too small because you were never meant to shrink enough to remain inside them. Walk into a life where you can stand at your full height. Love people deeply. Treat them with mercy. Be patient. Forgive. Give. Care. But never confuse goodness with disappearance. Never confuse loyalty with self-destruction. And never save a relationship by destroying the person inside it. If someone can only stay while you keep becoming smaller, then their staying is not the victory you think it is. Stop measuring love by who remains. Measure it by what you are allowed to remain while they are there. Your voice, your dignity, your boundaries, your full self. Because the right connection will never require your disappearance as proof of love. And if choosing yourself makes someone leave, let that truth hurt, but let it free you. Never keep a person by losing the person you have to live with for the rest of your life, yourself.